Hello, welcome along. First of the interview series that we are doing with a number of specialists in their area to really build on what we've done with the webinars over the last few months. We thought it was time to dive down into some of the detail and get to a layer below the sort of thing that Angela herself will talk to you about and get some experts in. So I'm really pleased to say today that we've got Carmen Harrington with us from Inspire to Change. She's a hypnotherapist. And we're going to have a bit of a chat really about mental health in the workplace. So, Carmen, first of all, welcome along.
Thank you. Nice to be here. Thank you.
It's great to have you. I think the first place to start, of course, do you want to explain what you do as a hypnotherapist?
Yes, because I think there is some, a lot of people don't quite understand exactly what we do. And I must admit, I didn't even know about it until I first heard about it about 5 years ago. What I do is I help people with their mental health. So I mostly work with people who are feeling really stressed and anxious, or people who have phobias, want to help with their confidence, depression. And what we do is we work and teaching people about how they can control their thoughts. And everything we do is based on neuroscience and what's actually going on in the brain with regards to neural pathways, how all the chemicals in your brain affect the rest of your body. We talk about the brain, basically. And it's attached to that is relaxation, which is the hypnosis side of things. And what that is just helping people cement what we've just talked about, all the positive stuff, into their brain, so then they'll be able to act on it. And hypnosis or trance is actually a perfectly natural state to be in. We actually go in it roughly about every 7 seconds, because another way of thinking about it is just actually focused attention. So if we're really concentrating and trying to think about something, we go into the sort of little daydreaming world, and that's all it is. So you always have control when you're in trance. You can get up and walk off the couch. There's no magic wand that happens.
Mm. I just love the science behind it as well. That really sort of brings it home. I think that my mind, I like that logical connection between, if you like, the theory of hypnotherapy, but also the science that sits underneath it just makes that connection for me. I guess my historical career was, I originally started as an engineer, so I've always got that scientific bit right in the background before I do anything else.
Everything we do is based on neuroscience, because the brain, it used to be thought that, you'd have all the brain cells that you're born with, and that's your lot. But actually your brain has neuroplasticity, which means it's always changing and forging, different ways of thinking, different neural pathways, a bit like sort of big neural cities, circuits in your head. So it's always changing.
Okay. So I suppose to set the call up, really, first thing to do is talk about, so what is mental health?
Yeah. See, this is a misconception as well. See, what would you consider would be mental health?
So mental, I think when people talk about it, mental health is always people who are suffering in some way. But I think mental health also has a very positive element to it as well. So it's your attitude to life, it's your ability to deal with setbacks and challenges and changes, and how you as a person deal with those things as well. It's not just about the negative when people go wrong and start to have problems and need help to I say get better, but to help them improve the way that they're thinking. So I think it's just that. It's like normal health, actually, isn't it? Physical health. Yeah. It's not just being ill. It's the fact that you go out, and in my case, I love cycling, so I'll go cycling, or go and walk my dog. It's actually getting out and those physical things you do as well.
That's exactly it. Because a lot of people think, when they think of mental health, they automatically think of poor mental health. But all mental health means is you've got a brain. If you think about it that way, that's all it really means. And you're right, it is comparable to your physical health, because if you think about your physical health, you always think about it from a positive perspective. You've got a physical health, but you don't do that with mental health. And it's really interesting the way that people have this immediate misconception that mental health is always poor. Did you know that actually people who do have really serious mental health issues, psychosis and things, 80% of people recover after their first episode. So when you think about poor mental health, it could be something that really stays with them.
Yeah.
Or people's perception of how they see them.
Yeah. No, absolutely. I guess that there's people I've known historically who've had various mental health issues, and actually I would have never have known it. It's only because once I got to know them that they told me, when that trust has built up, that I've ever realised anything's wrong with them. So it's something that in the normal being of things, you would never know that people had ever had a problem.
Exactly. And this is one thing I say to a lot of my clients who come and see me, particularly for anxiety, is the strength that you need to be able to cope with everyday things, but having all that really high stress anxiety and having all that tension in your body and having to cope with all the things, you know, going out and seeing people, all those stuff that normal people would think that they wouldn't think twice about doing it. Actually coping with that means you're stronger than a lot of other people.
Yeah. So I guess the other thing that we're talking about this in the realms of the workplace as well. So how can poor mental health impact somebody's life actually in the workplace, but also outside the workplace as well?
Yeah, see, the workplace, if you think about it, I read a wee while ago it's something about 90,000 hours we spend at work, which is an awful lot of time. So we need to make sure that, you know, we're feeling good when we're there. And one other statistic that is bandied about a lot is that 1 in 4 people in any 1 year suffers from their mental health. So in the workplace, if you have a company of, I don't know, 40 employees, 10 of them are likely to have some sort of mental health issue, which sort of puts it in perspective that it's actually really high. So it's important for people to realize that exactly what you were saying before, it's a hidden thing sometimes. People don't understand or realize that people are really suffering from these mental health issues because they can still function, they can still go to work and you know, do the things they need to. So a lot of it is down to there's a lot of, what am I trying to say, work days lost, I suppose, through mental health. And a lot of it is because the physical symptoms, if people say they can't go into work because they've got bad blood pressure or, you know, they're having heart trouble, they've got headaches, a lot of these things stem from mental health issues because the chemicals that come from the, you know, the brain actually lower your immune system and make you more susceptible to a lot of diseases. Or, you know, they harden your arteries, you know, stuff like that, so you can have cardiovascular disease. Headaches actually, or even hangovers can be a symptom of people drinking too much because, you know, coping mechanisms, and realizing that all these sorts of things that people can be physically sick with, so therefore they're spending time off work, can actually be down to a mental health issue in the first place. A lot of the reasons that people have mental health issues also in the workplace is because just all, you know, the normal stuff that people stress about when they're at work, deadlines, the amount of work. And one of the things that you have to remember is your brain plays all sorts of imagination and tricks on you all the time, because it's never the events, it's never the pile of work that you've got to accomplish. It's your perception of how you actually see that work. So if you suddenly get really overwhelmed thinking, I can't possibly cope with everything, I've got too much work to do, I can't, you know, do this presentation, whatever it is, it's not that that's causing the problem. It's the fact that you have probably high levels of anxiety or depression at the time, and you simply can't cope with it.
So as managers and business owners and leaders, we've got a big responsibility then to really help our staff and the people who work for us to be in a position where that doesn't become the case. Now, I suppose what's going through my head here is that as a manager, the first thing you have to do is be very clear on what you expect from your staff to make sure that they know what they are delivering to you. The next part of that, of course, is working with them to work out how they're going to deliver that. And part of that's obviously going to have multiple elements to it. So it's obviously that there's going to be technical skills that they need to employ to be able to do the piece of work, but actually it's also working with them to understand the quality and how long it's going to take them to achieve that picture as well. So you've got, I suppose, the two parts, haven't you? What are they going to do, and then work with them to understand how they're going to do it as well. And I suppose for multiple elements. So it gives them the chance to have a say in what they're doing, but also the part beyond that, which is the making sure what you're asking them to do is achievable. And if they need, obviously time is one of the aspects to that. The other aspect of that is making sure they've got the skills to be able to achieve that as well. And if they haven't, how as a manager do you support them in getting to that place at the same time?
That's true, and it seems really obvious when you say it like that, doesn't it? But a lot of people suffering from mental health issues, they struggle to articulate that. And it's not just the managers and that have that sort of onus on them, really. It's also down to the employees to make sure that they tell the managers that they can't cope or they're not coping, so, you know, whatever can change. And that's one of the biggest problems I think that people have, is when they can't control these things at work. You know,
Yeah.
when it feels out of their control, and that's, I think, when a lot of the trouble really does occur, because that's immediately when you get into the overwhelm scenarios, and you know, you start imagining all the, you know, the worst case ways that things can happen. I suppose they start to use their imagination to panic and to think about, well, I can't possibly achieve this. Therefore, before they've known it, more thoughts are attaching to these negative thoughts, and they've lost their job. And yeah. It can happen.
You raised a couple of interesting points as well there, Carmen, because I mean, there's two things that are going through my head. But first of all, there's multiple personality types. It's not narrowed down to two personality types. Some people actually, they apply the pressure to themselves to achieve, and really applying the pressure in an instance from a management point of view, where actually it's not necessary. This is what I need you to achieve. Your self-expectation is fantastic, but you've got to get it in proportion. But the other thing that's going through my head as well is that we've actually got the sort of left brain, right brain thing going on as well, haven't we? So it's the emotional desire to do very well without the logical, actually, what do I actually have to achieve? What's actually expected of me?
Exactly. When we're in the original primitive part of the brain, you can't think intellectually. So if you've got all that emotion and you're feeling really stressed and anxious about whatever it is you need to achieve, you don't have that actual ability to be able to work out how you can be solution focused and how you can work out the best course to sort out whatever issue you've got at work. So it's, you know, even if it's just talking to your manager and saying, you know, please, I just need an extra day to be able to achieve this, or please, I need some help. That doesn't even occur to you, because your brain works from previous patterns of behavior. And if you've always worked from that perspective of never asking for help, your brain won't think of doing it.
Yeah, and it's a good point. But actually, because we're sort of switching from management to what the person can do themselves as well. Because one of the things that actually, as you're talking, is obvious to me, is that actually just planning your day out. So we very much encourage people to plan their days. What has to happen today? What needs to happen? And you know, the things that would be good to happen today. But if they don't, we can roll them over a couple of days. But it's getting that control of what you need to do in your day to manage your time, and therefore to manage the stress levels.
Exactly. And I do that myself personally. I always write a list of what I need to do each day, because it's a good excuse for a list. But it's also understanding that flexibility needs to be built in that as well. Because if you can't achieve something, you know, I think the average person at work gets interrupted something like about 7 times an hour. So if you think about, you know, I'll just check my emails, or, you know, there's a phone call or something, you have to build all those sorts of things into your day as well, rather than thinking, I've got this enormous amount to achieve, and then you don't get any of it done.
Yeah. So what other things should people be doing then to protect their mental health at work?
Well, there's quite a few things that they can do. For example, realize that they are capable of being flexible and working out how they can help themselves. Be really open. You know, talk to other people if you're really struggling. And this is one of the hardest things, because if you are suffering from a mental health issue at work, there's the whole stigma of admitting to it, because there's a lot of people don't talk about what's going on at work, do they?
Yeah, if they're really very recently it's become a conversation piece, isn't it?
It should be even more of a conversation piece. And make people aware of it, because when you are really struggling, other people see you as being potentially lazy, or you know, you're being attention seeking, all of those sorts of things, but you're not. You're just trying to cope through your day. So there's lots of different ways of getting through a work day when you're suffering from mental health, or poor mental health, I should say. I'm falling into my own trap from the beginning. Is by understanding exactly what you were saying before, what you need to do and how you need to do it, because it really is the lack of control and the lack of autonomy in your job that often gives you that stress, and understanding that it's your perception of how you see things that is causing the issue. So also, if possible, I think one of the best things for good mental health in the workplace is making sure you're doing a job that you actually like. Yes. I mean, we're both really lucky from that perspective. We are doing jobs that we like. But I know I used to be an accountant, and I certainly didn't like that. So it's working out different ways that you can actually get support from people, because when you're feeling stressed and anxious, your brain sets up a red flag. You know, because, and it's sort of saying, hang on, I'm doing all the stuff I can't cope with. There's lots of change going on, whatever it is, your brain can't cope because it's always following, as I said before, previous patterns of behavior.
Yeah.
So it's learning how to be calm and relaxed about these situations. So then you have access to the intelligent part of your brain, your left prefrontal cortex, which gives you the opportunity to see how you can problem solve, how you can do these things differently. So not being stressed and being calm and relaxed in the first place is one of the best ways to learn how to cope at work. Because talking about it can be really challenging. You know, if you do have a problem trying to talk to your manager, or even talking to other employees, other colleagues.
So if we think one of our colleagues is suffering, is needing some support, what's the best way to approach that?
Ask them. It's really as simple as that. You know, how are you? Is everything okay? And if they say, yep, everything's fine, just, okay, well, I'm here if you need to talk to anybody. And, you know, just those obvious things, but keep asking. Don't think, okay, well, they're obviously fine, I don't need to ask again. Just always say, look, you really don't look like you've got a bit much on your plate at the moment. Can I help? What do you need support with? Because that's what we should be doing as colleagues and managers and even friends, supporting each other and realizing that somebody else, you know, might need help. There's a really good term in the workplace that I heard recently called presenteeism. I'm sure you know all about that, don't you?
I've got a reasonably good idea. Yeah. I want to explain it just in case.
Yeah. Presenteeism is something that's really relevant and really quite material in the workplace at the moment. A lot of people might wake up and they really don't want to go into work, but they go in anyway because they have to, because they need the money, whatever the reason is. You know, other people are relying on them, so they have to be actually physically in the workplace. But actually, they're not there mentally. So therefore, they're not doing the work that they need to be doing. They're not being productive. They're probably disrupting all their other colleagues because they just want to have a chat and they don't actually want to sit and do the work. So that has a huge knock-on effect to a lot of work things, because then you're you're getting the poor concentration, which leads obviously to low motivation, low confidence, and that's when accidents start to happen in the work. You know, a lot of those workplace accidents happen because people don't want to be in there in the first place, or they've had a really bad night's sleep even, which obviously doesn't make them want to be there. So presenteeism is giving people an opportunity sometimes. I know there's lots of companies in New Zealand that give people 5 mental health days a year. Yeah. So if you wake up and you just want to have a duvet day, you can. And if I first thought, gosh, that's a really generous way to be, but it is better than presenteeism, because when you do go back to work, you realize I've had this opportunity to recharge. I'm ready to do proper full work and be really productive.
So you say this as well. I was reading a book a couple of weeks ago, and it was talking about one of the schools in the States. Now, it's a very problem area at school, and a lot of disruption in the class. And they isolated it back to some of the problems that the students were having in their personal lives as well. And it became very, actually, when they were in the class, they were being very disruptive. And in the end, they put in place a special room, which was basically the do nothing room. But it allowed the students to get out of the environment they didn't want to be in. There were trained people in the room who could work with them to talk through some of their problems, if that's what they wanted to do. But it just gave them the option to get out of the environment they didn't want to be in, which I think is largely what you've just described, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And school is such an artificial environment. It's a really, really awkward place to be in. You know, those poor wee 4 and 5-year-olds, they can't sit still. They don't have the ability to sit and listen. and even when you get older, you know, you're 16, you're still having to be at school. And it can be a really, really difficult place for people. It is really similar to the workplace, isn't it?
Yeah.
I get quite a few teenagers who come and see me, and a lot of them are for reasons not just of, you know, huge workload and things, but there's also that social element, which again happens in the workplace, because you need to get on with people. And, you know, they come because they might not have any friends, but why should they be friends with that restricted number of people that they're actually associating with?
Yeah.
You know, and it's the same at work. it is difficult, but you do need to make the effort and be kind to people. You know, that really, the feeling you get sometimes when you're really highly stressed, and you might feel it in your chest or your tummy, which is just the, the fight, freeze symptoms happening. One of the best ways to counteract that is not through being calm and relaxed. It's actually being kind to other people. So if you are, do a nice thing for your workmates. It could be even something simple like making them a cup of tea. Just doing that makes you feel much happier, and it makes you feel more connected to them. You release one of your hormones called oxytocin, and even though it's a love hormone, it's also the connected hormone. So if you are feeling really good, and interacting in a really positive way with your other workmates, that can really help as well. But you have to be sincere about it. You can't just think, I don't deserve a cup of tea, I'm going to make it anyway. That sort of attitude doesn't work. You sincerely have to want to make them a cup of tea.
And that's an evolutionary thing, isn't it? The release of oxytocin is because it's to encourage us to fit in with the rest of the group. And it's all about being part of the tribe and not being expelled from the tribe. And obviously, if you go back to our primitive days when we were living in caves and things, the being expelled from the tribe was an instant death sentence. You weren't likely to survive very long, so you had to get on with the tribe. So from an evolutionary point of view, of course, we've evolved to make sure we do that and don't put ourselves in jeopardy.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And that's part of being down in the primitive brain and operating from a pure perspective of survival. And that's why we do always do the same patterns of behavior, because we know that that's what's kept us safe in the past.
Yeah, and that's the science I love, actually. When I can see that connection, I can see how we've got to where we are today. I find that stuff absolutely fascinating. So
when we are operating from the previous part of our brain, from the evolutionary perspective, it only operates from anxiety, depression, and anxiety. And it goes back to the caveman times, because if you think if a caveman couldn't go out and hunt and gather and successfully provide for his family, he'd just have to go back into the cave because, there could have been ice and danger around, whatever it was. And he'd just crawl under the rug and stay there for the day. And these have evolved into duvet days or depression. And anger, if you think about it, is just another way to be able to fight other wild tribesmen or other wild animals. And anxiety is on red alert all the time, looking out for those dangers. So all those things have actually evolved from back in the caveman times, primitive man.
Yeah, and it just doesn't fit with modern society, does it? We've evolved as a society where those are no longer appropriate solutions.
Yeah, exactly. I've tried to think what would be equivalents, and I've come up with traffic, but that's about all that I can think of that is sort of a danger around it at the moment. There's nothing else really, is there?
No, not really. And I think the thing is that also with the society we live in doesn't really allow for us going back and having a duvet day, as you just described. It very much requires us to always be there and to always be present. So it's the places just to go with the natural flow of what's happening around us have been suppressed by the society we now live in.
Actually, that's one thing that COVID-19 has changed a bit by allowing people to be at home and have that option of being a bit more flexible.
Yeah,
so there has been advantages.
Brings us on to a great point, actually. So with obviously COVID-19, what are the biggest mental health issues you've seen in the workplace as a result of COVID-19? The workplace, of course, now not just being the office either. It's going to be some people are working at home and things like that.
Yeah, one of the big things that I've seen, a lot of people come to me because trying to have that work-life balance can be really, really difficult, particularly if back when we were having to homeschool. And it's about setting your boundaries. And it seems such a really obvious thing, because my husband's working at home and trying to have our own workspaces and make sure that, we're not interrupting all the time. I quite often used to sit with just my laptop on my knee and try and work like that. And that doesn't work. I had to realize that I needed my own designated workspace, because that's how I concentrate better, knowing that that's where I need to be at work. But it's learning actually and having that power to be able to adapt and change. I was talking before about flexibility, and it's only by being calm and relaxed and not being stressed that you can change and adapt, because you're in the right part of the brain to be able to think, make proper decisions about stuff actually. And one of the big things that you have to think about also is your own self-care, because a lot of people think that it's a very selfish thing to do is to think of yourself first, but actually it's the least selfish thing you can do, because if you're looking after yourself and making sure that you're okay, looking after your own mental health as well as your physical health, it means that you're able to then look after other people and be supportive and a help to them. So you also have an obligation actually to look after yourself and make sure that your self-care is okay. One other thing is working out how your job can actually change, you know, with this whole online thing. Because I know a lot of people that are isolated in their homes, and I've seen quite a few people who are now, have got to the stage that people are able to go out a bit more often, not from Monday, obviously, but it's working out how they can actually interact with other people and they're not isolated in their own homes, because a lot of people are getting really scared to leave their homes, to actually go outside, and they've lost confidence in themselves. So it's bringing their self-esteem back up, even those sorts of things. And it's your tolerance to uncertainty, I think, because your brain is a muscle, and all these things like tolerance and flexibility and positive thought needs to be exercised.
Yeah, oh, absolutely. And it's pushing the boundaries as well, isn't it? It's like trying things you have not tried before. That expands what becomes acceptable to you. And it's amazing actually how quickly you try something that you were terrified to do and it suddenly becomes a natural thing to do. And then you can push the boundaries to the next step. But presumably what you've just described is the reverse happening. It's sort of contracting back in on itself because you've not been pushing the boundaries on a day-to-day basis.
Exactly. Control is constant. So if you're within a certain band and you've always done your work like this, you know, within that band, then you feel comfortable there, you don't do anything. But then, you know, COVID-19 came along and everybody had to start working online. So you go up into this new band and all of a sudden everything else with working in line or working online has changed. So that means you can do all these other things that you would never have dreamed of doing before. You know, for example, this, you know, beforehand we would have actually sat together, you know, in the same room.
Yeah.
But it's working out all those little things that you can do differently now because you're able to go into that new band where you can think about everything else that's within that band that you can now change and do differently.
Yeah.
It has been worked really well for so many people.
Yeah, which is an interesting point you just raised there, because I'm actually going to a face-to-face meeting this afternoon, and I'm actually a little bit nervous about doing it because I've not done it for so long, which is a very interesting twist, isn't it? It's even as you said it, I thought actually I could actually relate to this immediately as well.
I also teach hypnotherapy, and last weekend we were actually back in the classroom again instead of having all the students online. That was sort of a weird situation because, you know, you look on TV now and you think those two people are really close together. They've never met before. What are they doing? Yeah. And again, that's just changing the way that you think about things, and we do actually adapt really quickly.
Yeah. So what would you do? So when you're working with clients, obviously this had to be at a very general level, but what sort of thing can you do to help people who are suffering with stress and anxiety and even depression?
One of the first things I do is always be positive. So after an initial consultation, we never talk about the things that are upsetting them. So the very first question I'll always ask is, what's been good? And just asking that question means that people have to give you a positive reply. Yeah. If they start to talk negatively, I tell them off. So they have to talk positively. And it's getting people to understand that you are in control of your thoughts. And that seems like a really big one, because you get people who wake up first thing in the morning and they will say, right, that's it, I'm in a bad mood. So you have to stay in a bad mood all day. But that's not the case. You are in control of your thoughts. If you don't like those thoughts, you don't have to think them. They're your thoughts, you can stop them. But too many people like dwelling and, you know, thinking about, oh, poor me, this is really dreadful, the situation I'm in. And they keep talking about it. And a lot of people will say, well, how are you? And then people, you know, give you a long-winded answer about how terrible things are. They never talk about the good things. Yeah. We have something like about 100,000 thoughts a day. And if half of those are negative, there's an awful lot of, you know, poor thinking that's actually going on. Yeah. So it's teaching people how to be in control of their thoughts, and be positive, because that will affect every other aspect of their life. Yeah. And then it's just the hypnosis, the last bit is just sort of cementing everything and enabling them to be calm enough to realize that you can and actually believe that they will be in control of their thoughts.
Yeah, at a very practical level as well. So that's great. Because at a very practical level, it's as simple as just if somebody says, "How are you?" Let's not do the standard English response of "I'm not too bad," and actually just say, "I'm very well," or "I'm having a great day." And it does have that mental. It's got that mental tick on it as well, isn't it? It ties into your mood for the day as well.
Absolutely, because when you say "not too bad," what does your brain hear? Not and bad. You think saying "not bad" means, well, obviously I'm good, but actually it's not too negative. All those two negatives don't make a positive.
Yes,
exactly. Your brain is hearing both of the negatives, and that immediately puts you in a bad place.
Yeah, absolutely. I have a rule that I don't even try and make any decisions. Don't do any thinking in the morning till at least I've got out of the shower, because my brain's not ready for it at that point.
Fair enough. One of the best things you can actually do if you have a really big decision to make is sleep on. And that phrase quite. But what actually happens is all the things that you're thinking about during your day, they go from the original primitive part of your brain up the intellectual part of your brain. You have control of those thoughts. So the sleeping is actually running through everything during the REM part of your sleep, which is only about 20% of your sleep patterns. And it's actually processing everything that happens, so you can think about things logically and rationally and actually make really good intellectual decisions about what you're going to do, make proper assessments of situations. So one of the best times, if you've got a really big decision to make at work or even in your home life, is sleep, REM it.
Yeah, this goes back actually to what we're saying about planning your day and making lists as well, because we encourage people to plan out the next day. Don't plan your day in the morning first thing, plan it the day before, because exactly what you've just described, the brain works on what you just said you're going to do overnight. So by the time you start it the next day, you've actually worked out any big decisions you have to make. You've thought about it. You might not know the answer, but at least you've thought about how you're going to get to an answer. So it's that process of working overnight on it, isn't it? Overnight process.
Yeah. That's a really good point. And the other thing is about writing it down the night before is then you can get to sleep, because you're not having to think about reminding yourself of those same things over and over again.
Yes, absolutely. Oh yeah, I have an application on my phone that if I have a thought, write it down, I can move on. I figured that one out for myself years ago. As soon as it's written down, I didn't have to worry about it anymore. That's great.
Exactly.
So if anyone wants to work with you as Inspired to Change, how do they get in contact with you?
Either by email or phone, carmen@inspiredtochange.biz. Do you want me to give my phone number?
Go ahead, yeah.
It's 07817 387 559. And yeah, hypnotherapy works really, really well for, as I said, stress and anxiety. And I've had many people who've come to see me and they are leading completely different lives after just 6 to 12 weeks.
Oh, brilliant.
It's a really, really quick process, and it's a gentle process.
Marvellous. Carmen, it's been lovely talking to you today. Thank you for your time. Really interesting. You've got an area I could talk to you for hours more about some of this and really start to get down into the detail as well. So really appreciate your time today. It's been great. And
appreciate you asking.
We can do another one of these in the future. Great.
Thank you very much.